Hey, you're here for your movie fix, so let's get right to it. Today we're talking about 10, count them 10, legitimately awesome, legendary documentary films. Now, this is my personal top 10 list of the best documentaries ever made. So if you like a great documentary, you certainly came to the right video. And we've saved the best for first because number 10 on this list is Meru. Now, Meru is about a group of mountain climbers led by Conrad Anker. He's a mountaineer who specializes in ascending peaks or mountains that have never been climbed before or just impossible to conquer. And he's joined by two climbers, Renan Ozturk and Jimmy Chin. Jimmy Chin in this film is actually the principal cinematographer. He films all of their ascents of this peak. So his wife, Elizabeth Chai Vasarhelyi, apologize if I'm mispronouncing that, they co-directed this film. And listen, they've crafted an absolutely riveting tale. And if this wasn't a documentary, it would be an action adventure suspense thriller. I'm not kidding, it's that good. It also gets into the personal lives of these climbers. Incredible film. This movie came out over 10 years ago. So a lot of people either haven't heard of it or have never seen it, especially the younger generation of filmgoers. So if you haven't seen this movie, you have to check it out. It is my personal favorite, and I think it's the best documentary ever made. But that brings us to number 9 on this list. It's called Free Solo. Now, Free Solo, interestingly, is also directed by Jimmy Chin and his wife. Jimmy Chin, again, is the principal cinematographer on this film, including one of the co-directors. And this film focuses on another mountain climber named Alex Honnold. And he is a mountain climber who specializes in climbing with no ropes. All right, he doesn't do anything, just his hands. He does use some chalk when he does these ascents, but I guess we'll give him a pass on that. But this movie focuses on his quest, Alex Honnold's quest to climb El Capitan, which is a mountain face out in Yosemite National Park. So, they chronicle this. They get into Alex Honnold's kind of personal life and his background, what motivates him to do this. And it also gets into some of the dynamics of Jimmy Chin and how he feels about filming this attempt. But this is an incredible film. I'm not a huge fan of heights, so to say that this movie is an intense experience is an understatement. It's also one of the best documentaries ever made, so I hope you check it out. That brings us to number 8 on this list. It's called Riding Giants. Now, Riding Giants is a documentary film about the history of big wave surfing, and focuses mainly in the Hawaii area, but it goes other places too. But the Hawaii area is where all this kind of started, kind of goes through the history and the evolution of the sport. But the primary focus of the film is on Laird Hamilton, who at the time was the best surfer in the world. And I think he still does hold that title, if I'm not mistaken. But it really gets into Laird Hamilton's history, his background, his motivations, and how he got interested in surfing. It also gets into some absolutely phenomenal footage of him riding some of the biggest waves on the planet. It is absolutely mesmerizing, and I hope you check this documentary out. One of the best ever made and one of my personal favorites. But that brings us to number 7 on this list. It's called The Fog of War. Now, The Fog of War is a little departure from these other films. It's about geopolitics, and the primary focus of this film was on Robert McNamara. He's older in this film, but he talks about when he was the Secretary of Defense during the Vietnam War era, and he gets into the fact that the Gulf of Tonkin, which was our primary motivator for escalating the war in Vietnam and basically making an official war, the Gulf of Tonkin incident basically never happened. It was a fabricated event, and Robert McNamara talks about that fact in this movie. It's an incredible film. It was nominated for an Academy Award, but it kind of gets into the whole thing that most wars are unfortunately based on deception and to get the public to support them. And, unfortunately, that's still how geopolitics works today. But this is a great documentary if you haven't seen it. It got released, I think, almost 20 years ago, so a lot of people have not seen this either. Hope you check this one out. That brings us to number 6 on this list. It's called Enron, the Smartest Guys in the Room. Now, Enron is about a company in the during the 90s and the early 2000s that was one of the biggest companies in America, one of the biggest companies in the world. It was an energy company, but it did a lot of trading and all kinds of different things. Its stock price was phenomenal. It was the kind of mainstay cornerstone of a lot of investors in their retirement funds. And unfortunately, the company, even though it started out legitimate, it eventually evolved into something that was fraudulent. They weren't making money anymore. They were bankrupt, but they were hiding it. They were siphoning money off through shell companies and doing all kinds of basically illegal things. And this documentary really gets into the downfall of the company. Unfortunately, how its stock price plummeting to zero really, unfortunately, made a lot of investors lose a lot of money. So this is an incredible thing. Unfortunately, there are corporations who are still doing the things that Enron are doing. But if you haven't seen this film, it's a pretty old documentary too, but it is one of the best. I hope you check it out. The next movie on this list, number 5, is Touching the Void. Now, Touching the Void is another movie about mountain climbers, and you figure 3 movies out of the top 10 are mountain climbing, but this one fits on the list, and it's about 2 guys who actually ascend a peak that's never been climbed before, but actually during their descent, the climbers get into some trouble, and one of them gets separated from the other. And I don't want to tell you a whole lot more about this film, but it's an incredible tale. The climber, Joe Simpson, eventually makes it back to base camp, but how he does it is a story within itself. So I hope you check this documentary out. It's one of my favorites and one of the best ever made. That brings us to number 4 on this list. It's called Pulling John. Now, Pulling John's a movie about arm wrestling. You may say, man, this is kind of a weird subject for a documentary, but its primary focus is on a guy named John Brzenk. And John Brzenk has been one of the best arm wrestlers in the world for decades. And at the time of this movie, this actually is a kind of an older documentary too, but at the time, nobody had ever beat John Brzenk in arm wrestling, and he would basically arm wrestle anybody. He was a pretty good-sized guy, but he would wrestle any heavyweight guys that outweighed him by 50, 60, 100 pounds. He'd arm wrestle everybody, and nobody could beat him. A lot of people haven't heard of John Brzenk, and I hadn't either before I saw this documentary, but it's just an incredible film. It focuses on him and some up-and-coming arm wrestling competitors who want to beat him because he's the guy to beat. But the other amazing thing about this movie is the humble nature of John Brzenk and the type of guy he is, considering his status in the sport. But I hope you check this movie out. It's one of my favorite documentaries of all times. But that brings us number 3 on this list. It's called Super Size Me. Now, you may have heard of this film. It focused on a guy named Morgan Spurlock. He's a filmmaker, and basically what he did was he ate McDonald's every day for, I think, 30 days, I think a whole month. He ate that every day, all day, every day, and it kind of documented the health effects and the psychological effects it had on it. It's an interesting film. If you haven't seen it, it came out a pretty long time ago, but it's really well done, and God, it may make you want not to eat McDonald's ever again, but it's a fascinating documentary. It's also in my top 10 list, so I hope you check it out. That brings us to number 2 on this list. It's called Fahrenheit 9/11. Now, Fahrenheit 9/11 was made by Michael Moore. He's a kind of a controversial director, but he made this movie just right after 9/11, and it was kind of looked at some of features and specifics and details of 9/11 that really weren't reported anywhere else, so it's fascinating in that sense. And it's certainly a political documentary, but listen, you have to put it on the list. It was one of the highest grossing documentary films ever made. It's got a lot of good points in it. Whatever your political stance is, it really revisits that time to see what was happening geopolitically. And I haven't really heard Michael Moore ever talk about this film anymore. It's came out almost 25 years ago. So it helps you kind of revisit it, especially since we're coming to the 25th anniversary of 9/11. So I hope you check it out. And that brings us to number 1 on this list. It's called Searching for Sugarman. Now, I have to give a shout out to one of my subscribers, John. Hey, JC, this movie's free. He recommended it to me when it came out, like in the last 10 years. I didn't even hear of it, wasn't planning on seeing it, but it's about a artist named Rodriguez. That's the name he went by. He was an artist who recorded. He made 2 albums in the 70s, early 80s, and then he just kind of went into obscurity, and nobody really ever heard from him again. And he really wasn't doing music anymore. He'd kind of given up on the dream of becoming an artist, and turns out that there are people in other parts of the world who'd heard of him, and I don't want to tell you a whole lot more about that so you can experience this film for yourself. But is this one of the best documentaries I've ever seen? Absolutely, and you have to see it. It's just an incredible journey of this guy kind of getting back into music. But JC, thanks for recommending this film to me, and I hope all of you enjoy this list. You may disagree with me about the inclusion of the documentaries on this list. You may disagree about the rankings of these films, but hey, that's why we talk movies. please comment and subscribe, and please feel free to disagree, because we certainly encourage that kind of behavior around here. So thanks for being here, and we'll see you for the next one.